Geeks and geekettes, it's Chuck Dixon back again to talk about what I do for a living and answer some of your questions. What I do for a living is I write comic books, in case you didn't know. A little housework here from the previous episode. Somebody asked me about film noir, and there was an aspect of film noir I didn't get to discuss. A lot of people talk. I saw uh, a thing on the internet when I was looking for images, film noir images. It said how to do film noir films on a budget. Well, that's how film noir movies were made. That's how film noir was created, on a budget. The look of film noir movies owes a lot to the fact that these were, low budget, bottom of a double feature programmers. They're generally well under 90 minutes long. Some of them are only just a little bit over an hour long, and they were made for quick buck, fast play, and there wasn't a lot of money. You have excellent actors in these things, people like Dan Duryea and Edmund O'Brien and Virginia Gregg and Elizabeth Scott, but these were not the highest paid actors in Hollywood. These were journeyman actors who cranked out a lot of films every year, to pay the bills. The other important thing about the budget for film noir is there wasn't a lot of money for lighting, wasn't a lot of money for crew. So they did a lot of filming at night, did a lot of filming on studio backlots. They went out on locations when they could, late at night, so they didn't have to pay for permits. And they lit the scenes however they could, and these were very, very clever directors who knew how to work the lighting as best they could. They worked with the budgets they had, and that's part of what makes film noir special and what makes film noir feel kind of real because, you know, there wasn't the money for the big glossy film production that other films had. There wasn't color. There wasn't a lot of lighting. There wasn't a lot of makeup work. Wardrobe was even kind of chintzy. So it all lent itself to the very sweaty, real, grubby look that film noir often had. So that's it. I just wanted to add that about film noir. Um, Sven Marcus Bjorklund. He says, what are your favorite adaptations of characters and titles you've created and or worked on? Doesn't have to be limited to comics. Okay, my dad, hands down, the animated Bane was my favorite of all the characters I've created, presented in another medium. The animated Bane, they just got it right. I never did a full blown origin for him or anything else, but his attitude, his look, his rage was all dead on. Even when they played with the look, Bane's one of those characters you can play with the look and he still looks like Bane, as long as he's got that black tank top on, the huge muscles, and the crazy full head mask. It's Bane. And the most entertaining aspect of the animated versions was in his first appearance, he was voiced by Henry Silva, the great movie bad guy. I mean, one of the greatest movie bad guys of all time, with that awesome voice. Uh, that baritone, that threatening sibilant. Yeah, it's just this guy is just such a great bad guy, just a terrific villain. And for him to do Bane I was on the moon. I was so happy when I heard he was going to be the voice of Bane. Another great one, an obvious choice, is Danny Trejo. I mean, come on, that voice. He sounds like Bane sounds in your head, doesn't he? I mean, or should. It's what Bane sounds like in my head. Now, the other adaptation of my work that is just really a morning. Levon's Trade is being adapted for a television series, either for basic cable or streaming. I don't know which yet. It's going to be produced through Sylvester Stallone's Balboa Productions, and Sly has written the first couple of episodes. And it's especially flattering to me because it very closely follows the material in the book. It's not a lot of changes. And he's open to input. We had a couple of email exchanges where I suggested a few things based on what he'd written, and they were enthusiastically received because it didn't cost any money. Because it's Sly's money, baby. It's his production company, so you got to think about that. Okay, next question. Rodney Rodas. Would you ever revisit Connor Hawke? Yeah, why not? I liked Connor Hawke. Connor Hawke, in case you didn't know, is Oliver Queen's mixed race. Very confusing on the mixed race thing, but mixed race, illegitimate child. Who when Oliver Queen died, took on the mantle of Green Arrow. And my version of him, I didn't create him. I believe Kelly Puckett created him. I'm not sure. It might have been Kevin Dooley. Somebody needs to correct me on this. But he was part of that spate of replacement characters for the B-level superheroes at DC. They'd replace Green Lantern, they'd replace the Flash, and here they're replacing Green Arrow. And yeah, I enjoyed the stuff because it was straight up, adventure. And I liked the character of Connor Hawke because in my version, he wasn't anywhere near as good with a bow and arrow as his dad. He was good because he practiced a lot. But his dad, as it was revealed in DC continuity, had a meta-human ability, an eye-hand coordination beyond that of normal human beings that allowed him to basically hit any target he saw. Connor needed a lot more practice. Connor's expertise was more as a martial artist. He was a better hands-on fighter than Ollie would ever be. And a lot of the stories were based on martial arts kind of themes. And but I liked it. It was high adventure. His relationship with Eddie Fires, his awkward demeanor around females. He was a very interesting character, very likable, and a little bit of a naif, like total opposite of Oliver Queen, who was a womanizing jerk for the most part. But yeah, what the heck? If they were to invite me back to do something on Connor Hawke, I would probably welcome that. Next question. What happened to your Blue Beetle storyline? Now, somebody mentioned on Facebook that this has been discussed before, but not entirely. I basically just discussed the how it related to Tim Drake. But Blue Beetle was very much, Ted Kord Blue Beetle was very much in the middle of my own Dixonverse continuity that I created at DC. He was often a character in Birds of Prey. For a while, was a romantic interest for Barbara Gordon. And I established in Birds of Prey that he was ill because he hadn't appeared anywhere in a while. And I wanted to give a reason why. And it's because he had an illness. But being a smart science type guy, he was working on his own cure. And of course, he's wealthy. So he could work on a cure for whatever it was he had. I can't remember what it was. It was some slow acting cancer. And, so he was out of commission. And my grandiose idea before we cured him, because I wanted to cure Ted Kord and put him right back in the Blue Beetle outfit again. I didn't want to. I mean, this is a beloved character. I didn't want to take him away from anybody. I was just trying to make him more interesting for the powers that be at DC, who didn't like the character at all. I mean, most editors hated Blue Beetle. I don't really understand why. Maybe something that happened when they were 11. But I've described this, but I'll go through it briefly again anyway. My ultimate idea was to have Robin get kind of tired of being Robin. Tim Drake leaves Batman and goes to the Blue Beetle and gets a job as the new Blue Beetle. The Blue Beetle's idea was to incorporate the Blue Beetle and have a Blue Beetle franchise in every major city. And Tim would be basically the pilot program. And it was a great fit because Tim is like a tech guy. He has a sense of humor, which Ted Kord also did. It was just a great fit character-wise. But it would only be 6 months. It would be a 6 months miniseries with Tim Drake as the new Blue Beetle, and Spoiler would become Robin for those 6 months. And it had the illusion of change and everything else. And I pitched it and pitched it and pitched it, and I couldn't get anywhere. They told me what a horrible, terrible idea this was. So my last issue of Robin was issue 100, and the very next issue by another Team 101 had the Spoiler as Robin. It was the ultimate FU from, not from DC Comics, but from my very indifferent, talentless editor that I had just before breaking ties with DC. So, yeah, comics will break your heart, my friend, or they'll try. Next question. How would the following superheroes react to the current rioting if you were writing them? Well, you're trying to get me in trouble, my friend, but I'll answer anyway. I think we all know what the Punisher would do, at least I do. And you see this, you see this if you follow the rioting and the course that these protests, the more violent protests are taking. You see the homicide rates going up in all the cities where they're occurring. And what's happening here is what happens in any revolutionary setting, be it Bosnia-Herzegovina, Post-Tsarist Russia, post-Maoist China. Scores are being settled. Because the cops are overburdened or absent, a lot of people who've been waiting to kill somebody else are going out and killing them. They're just taking care of business. It's like, that guy screwed me on a deal 5 years ago. I'm going to waste him and his whole family, and it'll look like it's part of the rioting. Or nobody will ever investigate it because the cops are overburdened. They've got years of investigations with these Antifa clowns that they're going to have to be doing. So I'm going to get away with it. The perfect crime, and it is the perfect crime. It's like the people who disappeared during 9/11. Did you know that people took the advantage of the 9/11 tragedy to simply vanish because who was going to say they weren't in the building? So Frank would go out and settle some scores. For Frank, it would be a Memorial Day weekend. He would just go out and start killing people that he wanted to kill. And the cops would be otherwise occupied. So that's what he would do. He wouldn't actually do anything about the riots. What's he care? Frank Castle is a what's in it for me guy all the way down the line. All right. Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Okay, classic Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Green Lantern, Green Arrow. Green Lantern would take some preposterous made-up position that no conservative on earth has ever held. And Ollie would get all pissed off and emotional and weepy. So I think we know what they would do. I don't know if they would do anything about the riots, but I'm sure it would be lame. Batman, I figure that, like Punisher taking advantage of the chaos, Batman's villains would take advantage of the chaos, and take sides in the rioting or take sides on the issue. And of course, Batman would have to come in as a mediating force to beat the hell out of them. I don't really know what Batman would do. This kind of situation to me doesn't really fit in a Batman story because it's the political overtones are too great. Luke Cage, to me, this one writes itself. I mean, Luke lives in the city. He is of the city, and he's an everyday guy. Doesn't wear a mask. Everybody knows who he is. Just walks around being Luke Cage all the time, being awesome all the time. And to me, it writes itself. Luke would have like a favorite Korean deli, and when the looters come to burn it out, he's going to no matter what his stance on the issues is, he's not going to let them, burn down Mr. Kim's deli, because where else would he get that awesome macaroni salad he eats? So that kind of thing, like a personal story. Because Luke Cage, to me, was always a character who dealt. He was like Frank Castle. He's a what's in it for me character. Cap would just go down and talk to them all, and everybody would go home and feel ashamed for what they did. Same thing with Superman. Superman would show up. Probably somebody would accuse him of white privilege till he reminded them all that he's not even human. He's a minority of one. Well, except for what is Supergirl? His cousin? Yeah, except for they're like, hey, and everybody settle down because I'm Superman. If I were writing it and I had carte blanche, I would just say Superman, say, look, I'm just going to go back to the Fortress of Solitude. This is all over. So why would I want to deal with this? I'm not human. It's none of my business. Okay. I love Lynn Michaels. Do you know if Marvel has any plans for her? I would imagine that as the Punisher TV show moves on, I mean, I understand they're going to keep doing it on the Disney streaming service. They're probably eventually going to get to Lynn. They're going to want to do a female Punisher. So Lynn Michaels is a character I created in the second arc on Punisher Warzone. She had been basically an origin like Frank. She'd been abused and had enough. And she was hunting in Central Park for bad guys when the two of them encountered one another. And, I can see them getting to her on the TV show. I don't know in the comics if they have any plans. They probably forgotten about her in the comics. I mean, I'm surprised with all the girl power feminazi stuff that they're doing a lot of at Marvel, that they haven't, replaced Frank anyway with Lynn. But I don't know. Well, she's a blonde. Maybe they don't like that aspect. So, but I always liked her as a character, very sympathetic. I always like strong female characters. That's no secret. And she is one of the better ones that I've worked on. All righty. Next question. Where's my phone? Well, did you look here? I'll bet it's in here. Oh, wait a minute. I know where you left it. Okay. Next question. Bob Dixon. I know Bob and I are related somewhere back. I think his family, branch of the family and mine, got separated at Antietam. Um, he wants to know, what does the color 9 smell like? Well, come on, Bob. Everybody knows that. It's like the number 8. It's just an aftertaste of cinnamon. Chuck Johnson says, will you be doing any more issues of Alt Hero Q? Well, I'm almost done with Alt Hero Q, but we're Archaven's not the biggest company in the world, and we have to pay our artists as we go along, and artists take other assignments. So the art end of it moving a little slow. The writing end of it is great. I think I have one more issue to write, and I'm finished. I would be finished with it entirely, but I don't want to get that far ahead of my pencilers. But Alt Hero Q, in case you don't know, it's Roland Dane is a former Treasury agent who now works for QAnon, the notorious dark web conspiracy theorist. Anyway, he works for them, and it's kind of a Birds of Prey guy. It's an all-guy version of Birds of Prey, and in this current storyline, he's dealing with all kinds of things. Russian separatists in Ukraine, and car chases, and terrorists in Brazil, and yeah, it's a high action, high octane, thriller series with Roland Dane, who is a slob hero in the vein of Frank Castle. So yeah, I would like to see the issues come out quicker, but trust me, they'll all come out, and we will all be thrilled. Dan Donovan, you were involved in, if I'm remembering them all, 6 Batman family crossover events during your tenure with DC. I wish I had tenure at DC. Nightfall, Contagion, Legacy, Cataclysm, No Man's Land, and Bruce Wayne Fugitive. Well, let's go through them all from the best to the worst. Nightfall was just freaking awesome. I was, basically, it's my sophomore year at DC. I worked on the Robin miniseries. They invited me to go to a summit. I had no idea what it was all about. It was there that Denny laid out Nightfall, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. I want to be part of this. And the very first day at lunchtime, Denny offered me the writing gig on Detective, which I held for, I think, 85 issues or more. So I got to be right in the heart of Nightfall. I got to be at all the summit meetings and retreats and put my 2 cents in. And Graham and I created Bane. Graham Nolan and I created Bane, who was, at the center of the whole damn thing. So that was awesome. That was awesome. Contagion, I was a little less thrilled with, because I like crossover events, Batman centric ones that are actually Batman centric. And since Bruce Wayne is not a pathologist, I didn't understand, what is Batman going to do about a disease. I mean, if Batman were a real thing, what would he do about the coronavirus? Not a whole lot. He'd probably be worried that, he's living in a cave full of bats. That might be a problem for him. But yeah, I wasn't as thrilled with this one. I think we got some good stories out of it, but it wasn't the same as Nightfall and Night's End and Night Quest. I mean, that was a 2-year continuity that, that was just amazing to work on. And Contagion, I don't think it was as good a follow-up. Legacy, I thought was better because it brings back Bane. It includes Ra's al Ghul. And we, of course, ends with the Batman Bane rematch. It pretty much puts the end cap on Nightfall, and I enjoyed this one. And but be quite honest, I think Doug and Alan were a little exhausted with the crossovers at this point, and I would become exhausted with the crossovers as well. And Legacy was a lot of, I ran a lot of Legacy. I took the lead on a lot of it because I think Doug and Alan were just, Alan never talked a lot at these meetings anyway, unless he heard something he completely objected to. and then he would weigh in. Trust me. A lot of times it was Doug and Denny and I, and then the junior woodchuck editors, Scott Peterson and Jordan and Gorfinkel and Darren, and they would weigh in as well. Um, but Legacy, I carried the ball a lot on Legacy. Um, I don't know how much that was appreciated by the other writers, but there were aspects of it I found very exciting. And of course, we got to do Detective 700 out of it, Graham and I, which was, um, I don't know, a dream come true for us to do a landmark issue of Detective Comics, which I think is our favorite Batman comic, both Graham and I. I think I can speak for Graham without fear of correction. Cataclysm is another one. I got some good stories out of it, but I thought the core idea of an earthquake striking Gotham was even more out of Batman's range of comfort than Contagion was. I thought Cataclysm would have made an awesome Superman story if an earthquake had struck Metropolis. And but we all got some interesting stories out of it. I wish the villain thing, and I blame myself for this as well. I wish the villain thing had been a little more, had been better delineated. I forget the character. Was it Dr. Quake or something? We really didn't put the work into that we should have put into it. Um, I believe it was my surprise that Dr. Quake turns out to be a phony. I don't want to spoil for everybody. But he turns out to be a phony. He turns out to actually be a puppet. So I think I may have contributed that. I don't know. I don't want to be patting myself on the back. Okay, then we get to Fugitive. Actually, I should do No Man's Land first. No Man's Land, I wasn't that involved with. Um, Doug and Alan and I had all been relieved of duties on our Batman titles, and new writers brought in. And No Man's Land was pretty much up and running when I was brought in. And I was only brought in because I really just, all the junior editors told me that I needed to insist on being there, since I was still doing Bat-related titles. I still had Nightwing, I still had Robin, that I should be there. But by the time I got to a summit, it was already in motion. And I had a lot of problems with it, but it wasn't my baby. I mean, I spoke up, I said my piece, but I think logistically, it wasn't very well set up. And if I have any complaints about Denny O'Neil's editorship, it's that he didn't think of the logistics of these things very much. He didn't think about the real world aspect of these stories, which would have made for more interesting stories. I'm not talking about page after page of explanations. I'm talking about the challenges, the real world challenges these characters would face in situations like this. And I thought that No Man's Land was just, could have been better set up, and we could have spent more time setting it up. We spent a lot of time setting up Nightfall. I mean, the year prior to Bane even appearing is all set up for Nightfall. If you go back and read it, you can see what we were doing, but nobody knew at the time. I think No Man's Land needed the same kind of thing, and I don't think Cataclysm was enough for the setup. To give you an example how Denny would resist logistics, I mean, I had a problem with after Cataclysm, Wayne Manor is destroyed. I had a problem with it being rebuilt on the same spot. I said, well, Bruce and Alfred can't rebuild Wayne Manor. They would have to get contractors. And when the contractors are rebuilding Wayne Manor, wouldn't they find the Batcave? Because it's right under the frickin' house. And I suggested that Wayne Manor be reconstructed on a concrete pad at a different site than it had been on before, and that Superman move it, put it in place for Bruce. So I had this idea that these contractors would come, like they were going to do a little plastering, a little paintings, a little finished work on Wayne Manor. And they show up in the morning and the whole place is gone. And there's just this rectangular depression in the ground where the house was sitting the day before. And I tried to talk Denny into it. I said, even if it was subtle, even if we didn't actually see Superman do it, we just saw like a corner of a cape, and Denny would not hear of it. So we didn't do it. I missed opportunity. That's what I mean by, if you stick to logistics and real world, there's some really cool story stuff you can do. When you ignore it, you lose all that stuff. Batman Fugitive was a freaking train wreck to my mind. It was the last summit I was at. It was miserable. It was horrible. Everybody did not play nice. And, one guy tried to run the whole meeting. And when we got to the end of 3 days of this, twisted, awful storyline in which I was going to be assigned to be Dr. Explainer, all my issues were just people explaining things while everybody else got the high points. Something that never happened under Denny. We all shared the dramatic high points. Everybody got something cool to do. This was not designed that way. Somebody wanted to hog all the best parts of this crappy story to themselves. And at the end of the whole thing, we're getting up, we're coming to the end of our third day, and the group editor just wraps it up. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Bruce Wayne is on the run for killing his girlfriend, but we don't know who really did it. And they all insisted that that didn't matter. And I insisted that no, when you write a mystery story, you need to know the conclusion so that you know how to write to it. Mystery stories are written backwards. You come up with a conclusion and then work out how your detective character is going to make it to that conclusion. But they went into this thing with absolutely no idea. Bruce Wayne murderer followed by Bruce Wayne fugitive. No freaking clue of who actually killed the girl. And I don't even know how it ended because I wasn't interested enough. Even though I wrote in both of those arcs, I wasn't interested enough in their, nobody leave this room ending at the very end of the story that revealed the killer to even find out who it was. To this day, I don't know. Maybe somebody can tell me. Maybe I should be asking questions. So anyway, that's it for me. End of the road for this segment. I do other segments like this. I'm not going to put up a paywall for these right now for a while, but I need you to promise me, if you like these, to tell others so I can build an audience here on YouTube for these question and answer videos. But I have, I'm going up near 100 videos over on unauthorized TV that go into even greater depth on some of these subjects, really nerdy, really deeply geeky essays and videos on comics, writing in general, all that stuff. It's all available at unauthorized TV. It is a subscription service. And that's about it. I will see you down the road, my friends.